Billionaire CEO dumped pregnant wife at the hospital for a new marriage with Mistress unaware of her $10 billion deal, but she survived and bought the mansion he took his mistress to. The heart monitor's steady beep was the only sound Dylan heard as he signed the divorce papers beside his wife's hospital bed, unaware that the woman he was abandoning held the key to a $10 billion empire. Before we get deep into the story, please let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Hit subscribe if you're hooked in and ready to enjoy the story, because tomorrow I have another beautiful story to share with you and I don't want you to miss it for anything. Now let's get into the story. The sterile white walls of Mercy General Hospital seemed to close in around Lola Williams Montgomery as she shifted uncomfortably in the narrow bed, her swollen belly making every position a challenge. At 7 months pregnant, she should have been glowing with anticipation, but instead, dark circles shadowed her warm brown eyes, and worry lines creased her usually smooth forehead. The heart monitor beside her bed beeped steadily, a mechanical rhythm that had become the soundtrack to her thoughts over the past 3 days. 3 days since the bleeding started. 3 days since the doctors put her on strict bed rest. 3 days since her husband had last looked her in the eye. Dylan Montgomery stood at the window of the private suite, his 6-foot frame silhouetted against the gray Seattle skyline. His tailored Armani suit hung perfectly on his shoulders, not a wrinkle in sight despite the long hours he'd been spending at the hospital. His platinum wedding band caught the afternoon light as he scrolled through his phone, thumb moving with practiced efficiency across the screen. Dylan. Lola's voice was soft, tentative. Dr. Peterson said the baby's heartbeat is stronger today. Maybe we can. He didn't turn around, didn't lower the phone. Just that dismissive sound that had become his default response to her over the past 6 months. Lola's hand instinctively moved to her belly, fingers tracing gentle circles over the fabric of her hospital gown. Inside, their daughter, their miracle baby after 3 years of trying, shifted restlessly, as if sensing her mother's distress. The irony wasn't lost on Lola that she'd built her entire career on reading people, on understanding the subtle shifts in body language and tone that revealed hidden truths. Yet she'd somehow missed the signs that her own husband was slipping away. Or maybe she'd seen them and chosen to ignore them. The phone in Dylan's hand buzzed with an incoming text. Lola watched his reflection in the window, saw the way his jaw tightened slightly, the almost imperceptible shift in his posture. She'd seen that look before, the same expression he wore when Montgomery Industries was about to close a major deal. "You need to get back to the office," she said, not really a question. Finally, he turned. His ice-blue eyes, once warm when they looked at her, now held the same cold assessment he reserved for quarterly reports. "The Singapore project needs my attention. The board is getting restless." Lola nodded, swallowing the words she wanted to say. "What about me? What about our baby? What about the promises you made when you said you'd never become like your father?" "I understand," she said instead, because that's what she'd learned to do. Understand. Accommodate. Smooth over the rough edges of Dylan's ambition with her own quiet strength. Dylan's phone buzzed again. This time, he glanced at it and actually smiled, a real smile that Lola hadn't seen directed at her in months. The sight of it was like a physical blow. "I'll be back later," he said, already moving toward the door. "Try to rest." The door closed behind him with a soft click, leaving Lola alone with the beeping monitor and the weight of unspoken truths. She reached for her own phone on the bedside table, fingers hovering over the screen. The email from her lawyer had come in that morning, marked urgent. The words were still burned into her memory. "Lola, the Nakamura tech acquisition is moving faster than expected. They're prepared to offer $10 billion for your AI patents. We need your signature by end of week." $10 billion. The culmination of 8 years of work, of late nights spent coding and designing while Dylan built his empire. The artificial intelligence patents she developed weren't just revolutionary. They were about to reshape entire industries. And Dylan had no idea. It had started as a side project during their first year of marriage, something to keep her mind occupied while Dylan traveled for business. She'd always been gifted with technology, but marriage to a Montgomery meant playing the role of the supportive wife, attending charity galas and board dinners rather than pursuing her own career ambitions. So she'd worked in secret, using her maiden name for all legal documents, keeping her achievement separate from the Montgomery name that opened doors but also cast shadows. The irony was bitter. Dylan had married her for love, or so she believed, but had slowly begun to see her as a liability, a reminder of his more humble beginnings. She'd watched him grow more distant after each social event where someone whispered about his interesting choice of wife, had felt him pulling away as he climbed higher in Seattle's elite circles. Now, as she lay in this hospital bed carrying his child, she realized she'd been fighting a losing battle. The woman Dylan had fallen in love with, the brilliant, ambitious Lola Williams who'd earned her PhD in computer science at 24, had been systematically erased, replaced by the perfect society wife who smiled at the right moments and never outshone her husband. But Dr. Lola Williams still existed. She'd been patient, building her empire in the shadows, and now that empire was about to dwarf everything Dylan had ever achieved. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Dr. Peterson entered, her kind face creased with concern. "How are we feeling today, Lola?" "Tired," Lola admitted. "But the baby's been active." Dr. Peterson checked the monitor, made notes on her chart. "I'm going to be honest with you. The bleeding has stopped, which is good, but your stress levels are concerning. High-stress pregnancies can lead to complications, and at 32 weeks, we need to be very careful." Lola nodded, though she wanted to laugh at the understatement. Stress. As if the word could encompass the slow-motion destruction of her marriage, the isolation she felt despite being surrounded by Dylan's world of wealth and influence. "Is Dylan coming back tonight?" Dr. Peterson asked gently. "He's busy with work," Lola said automatically, the response so practiced it came without thought. Dr. Peterson's expression softened. "Lola, I've been practicing obstetrics for 20 years. I've seen a lot of families go through difficult times. But I want you to know that whatever you're dealing with, you don't have to face it alone." The kindness in her voice nearly broke the dam Lola had built around her emotions. She felt tears threaten, but she blinked them back. Montgomery wives didn't cry in public. They maintained composure, handled challenges with grace and dignity. "I'm fine," Lola said, the lie tasting bitter on her tongue. Dr. Peterson didn't push, but her eyes held understanding. "I'll check on you later. Try to rest." As evening approached, Lola found herself staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of the hospital around her. Nurses moving through corridors, the distant ding of elevator doors, the murmur of families gathered around other beds. The loneliness was crushing, made worse by the fact that Dylan's absence was becoming more normal than his presence. Her phone buzzed. A text from her sister Maya. "How are you feeling? Want me to come sit with you?" Lola's fingers hovered over the keyboard. Maya was a nurse at a clinic across town, working double shifts to pay off her student loans. She'd offered to take time off when Lola was first hospitalized, but Lola had insisted she was fine, that Dylan would be there. "I'm okay. Dylan's here." The lie came easily, another small betrayal of herself. "Good. Love you, sis. Call if you need anything." Lola set the phone aside and closed her eyes, trying to quiet the storm of thoughts in her mind. Tomorrow, she would sign the papers that would make her one of the wealthiest women in America. Tomorrow, she would own technology that would change the world. But tonight, she lay alone in a hospital bed, abandoned by the man who'd promised to love her in sickness and in health. The baby kicked hard against her ribs, as if responding to her emotional turmoil. Lola placed both hands on her belly, feeling the strong movements of her daughter. "It's okay, little one," she whispered. "Mama's going to figure this out." But even as she spoke the words, she wondered if she was lying to her unborn child the same way she'd been lying to herself for months. The heart monitor continued its steady beep, marking time in a life that was about to change forever. What would you do if you discovered your spouse was pulling away during your most vulnerable moment? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever had to find strength you didn't know you had? The next morning arrived with the kind of pale Seattle light that made everything look washed out, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Lola had barely slept, her mind cycling between the weight of the Nakamura deal and the growing chasm between her and Dylan. She'd practiced the conversation in her head a dozen times. How she would tell him about the patents, about the billions that would soon be theirs, about how this could be a new beginning for their family. But when Dylan walked into the hospital room at 9 a.m. sharp, something was different. His usual disheveled morning appearance had been replaced by meticulous grooming. His hair was perfectly styled, his suit pressed to crisp perfection, and there was a cologne she didn't recognize lingering in his wake. "You look nice," Lola said, attempting a smile. "Important meeting today?" Dylan's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Something like that. He pulled a chair close to her bed, but not close enough to touch. The distance felt deliberate, calculated. In his hand was a manila envelope, thick with papers that rustled as he set it on the bedside table. "Lola, we need to talk." The words hit her like ice water. She'd heard that tone before. The same flat, businesslike cadence he used when firing executives or closing underperforming divisions. Her hand instinctively moved to her belly, as if she could protect their daughter from whatever was coming. "About what?" she whispered, though part of her already knew. Dylan's ice-blue eyes met hers for the first time in days, and what she saw there made her stomach drop. There was no warmth, no trace of the man who used to bring her coffee in bed on Sunday mornings, who used to trace patterns on her skin while she fell asleep. This was the Dylan Montgomery that boardrooms feared. Cold, calculating, and utterly without mercy. "I want a divorce." The words hung in the air like a physical presence. The heart monitor beside her bed seemed to stutter, its steady beep faltering as her pulse spiked. Lola felt the room tilt, as if the floor had suddenly become unstable. What? She struggled to sit up straighter, wincing as the movement pulled at her fore. "Dylan, I don't understand. We're having a baby." No." His voice cut through her words like a blade. "I'm done, Lola. This marriage, this whole pretense, it's over." Pretense. The word came out as barely a whisper. "Is that what this has been to you? A pretense?" Dylan stood abruptly, pacing to the window. For a moment, his composed facade cracked, and she saw something that might have been guilt flash across his features. But it was gone as quickly as it appeared. "I've been trying to make this work for months," he said, not looking at her. "But we both know it's not working. We're from different worlds, Lola. We always have been. Different worlds." Lola's voice rose, and she didn't care if the nurses heard. "Dylan, we built a world together. We've been married for 5 years. We're having a baby. Are we?" He turned back to her, and his expression was so cold it took her breath away. "Are we really building anything together? Or am I just carrying the weight of this marriage while you play house?" The accusation hit her like a physical blow. Playhouse. "Dylan, I've given up everything for you. My career, my dreams, my identity. I've molded myself into whatever you needed me to be. And that's the problem." His voice was getting louder now, the veneer of control slipping. "I don't need you to be anything, Lola. I need you to be someone who can stand beside me in this world, not someone I have to constantly protect and explain." "Protect me from what? Explain me to whom?" "To everyone." The words exploded from him. "To the board members who question my judgment every time you stumble through a conversation about market trends. To the investors who wonder why I chose a wife who can't even order wine properly at dinner. To the—" "Stop." Lola's voice was barely audible, but something in her tone made him close his mouth. "Just stop." The silence that followed was deafening. Lola could hear her own heartbeat in her ears, could feel her daughter moving restlessly inside her as if sensing the emotional storm. When she spoke again, her voice was steadier than she felt. "So this is about your reputation. About what people think." Dylan's lack of response was answer enough. "And you're doing this now?" she continued, her voice gaining strength. "While I'm lying in a hospital bed, scared for our baby's life, you're telling me I'm an embarrassment?" "Lola." "No, let me finish." She pushed herself up in the bed, ignoring the sharp pain in her back. "You want to know what I think? I think you're a coward. I think you fell in love with the idea of being different from your father, of being a man who could love someone regardless of their background. But when it got hard, when loving me became inconvenient for your ambitions, you chose the easy path." Dylan's face had gone pale, but his eyes remained cold. "You're being dramatic." Am I? Then explain this. She gestured to the envelope on the bedside table. Explain why you brought divorce papers to a hospital room. Explain why you're doing this now instead of. Because I'm getting married next week. The words hit her like a physical blow to the chest. The heart monitor's beeping became erratic, and Lola felt her vision blur at the edges. What? I'm marrying Victoria Ashford. The ceremony is next Friday. Victoria Ashford. The name rolled around in Lola's mind like a marble in an empty jar. She knew the name. Everyone in Seattle's social circles did. Victoria was everything Lola wasn't. Blonde, blue-eyed, old money, born into the world Dylan inhabited. She was the daughter of a federal judge, the granddaughter of a senator, the kind of woman who could trace her lineage back to the Mayflower. You're already engaged to someone else, Lola said slowly, the words tasting like ash. While I'm pregnant with your child. The baby. Dylan's voice faltered for the first time. We'll work out custody arrangements. I'll make sure you're taken care of financially. Taken care of? Lola's voice rose to near hysteria. Dylan, this is your daughter. Your child. How can you just... I can't do this anymore. He spun back to face her, and for a moment she saw the Dylan she'd married. Vulnerable, conflicted, human. I can't keep pretending that this is the life I want. Victoria understands my world. She knows how to navigate it. She's white. The words hung between them like a chasm. Dylan's face went rigid, and Lola knew she'd hit the truth he'd been dancing around. That's not what this is about, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Isn't it? Lola felt something inside her breaking, not just her heart but something deeper. Her faith in the man she'd loved, her belief in their shared future. Be honest with me, Dylan. For once in the past 6 months, just be honest. You're ashamed of me. You're ashamed of us. Dylan's silence was more devastating than any words could have been. Lola felt tears streaming down her face, but she made no move to wipe them away. How long? What? How long have you been with her? Dylan's jaw worked silently for a long moment. 8 months. 8 months. While Lola had been dealing with morning sickness, with the joy and terror of their first pregnancy, with the complications that had put her in this hospital bed, Dylan had been building a life with another woman. You started seeing her right after we found out about the baby, Lola said, the pieces clicking into place. The late nights, the business trips, the way you stopped touching me. Lola, please. Get out. What? Get out of this room. Get out of my life. Take your papers and your explanations and your guilt and get out. Dylan stood frozen for a moment, as if he hadn't expected her to simply dismiss him. You need to sign the papers, Lola. I've been generous with the settlement, but... Generous. Lola's laugh was bitter, broken. You think money makes this generous? You think any amount of money could compensate for what you're doing? I'm trying to do the right thing. The right thing. She struggled to sit up fully, her voice gaining power. The right thing would have been to work on our marriage. The right thing would have been to remember the vows you made to me. The right thing would have been to be here for your daughter instead of planning your wedding to another woman. Have you ever had someone completely blindside you when you thought you knew them? How did you find the strength to keep going? Let us know in the comments. Sometimes our darkest moments reveal our greatest power. Dylan's phone buzzed, and without thinking, he glanced at it. Lola saw his expression soften, saw the small smile that played at the corners of his mouth. Even now, even in this moment of ultimate betrayal, Victoria could pull his attention away from his wife. She's texting you, Lola said, and it wasn't a question. Dylan had the grace to look ashamed. Lola. Does she know about me? About the baby? His silence was answer enough. Oh God. Lola felt like she was drowning. She has no idea, does she? You've erased us completely. What did you tell her? That you were divorced. That you've never been married. It's complicated. It's not complicated, Dylan. You're living a lie. You're building a marriage on a foundation of deception, and you're destroying our family to do it. Dylan's phone buzzed again, and this time he ignored it. But Lola had seen enough. She reached for the envelope on the bedside table, her hands shaking as she opened it. The papers inside were thick, formal, filled with legal language that reduced their 5-year marriage to a series of financial transactions. "You've really thought this through," she said, scanning the pages. "Custody arrangements, asset division, spousal support." She looked up at him. "What about the house? The one we bought together? The one where we planned to raise our daughter? The Bellevue estate? I'm keeping it. Victoria and I will live there after the wedding." The final blow. The house where they'd made love in every room, where they'd planned their future, where she dreamed of their daughter taking her first steps. He was giving it to his new wife. "You're taking her to our home," Lola whispered. "It was always my house, Lola. The deed is in my name. Because you said it would be easier for taxes. Because you said what was yours was mine. That was before. Before you decided I wasn't good enough for you." Dylan's composure finally cracked completely. "Damn it, Lola, this isn't about good enough. This is about reality. This is about the fact that every time I look at you, I'm reminded of who I used to be, not who I need to become." "And who do you need to become, Dylan? Someone who abandons his pregnant wife? Someone who lies to his fiancée? Someone who destroys his family for social climbing? Someone who doesn't have to apologize for his choices?" The words hung in the air like a poison gas. Lola felt something inside her die, not just her love for him, but her belief in love itself. She looked at this man she'd shared her body with, her dreams with, her future with, and saw a stranger. "Sign the papers, Lola," Dylan said quietly. "Make this easy for both of us." "Easy?" Lola's voice was barely a whisper. "You think there's an easy way to do this? I've set up a trust fund for the baby. A substantial one. And the spousal support will ensure you can live comfortably." "I don't want your money. Be practical, Lola. You haven't worked in 5 years. You'll need—" "I said I don't want your money." She looked at him with eyes that had gone cold, and for the first time in their conversation, Dylan seemed uncertain. "In fact, I want you to change the trust fund." "What?" "I want you to set up a trust fund for exactly $1. Not a penny more." Dylan stared at her. "Lola, you're being ridiculous. You're pregnant, you're emotional. I'm done being underestimated by you." She reached for the pen on the bedside table, her signature hand steady despite the tremor in her voice. "I'll sign your papers, Dylan. I'll give you your divorce. I'll even give you permission to pretend this marriage never happened. Lola. But I want you to remember this moment. I want you to remember that you chose to walk away from the strongest woman you'll ever know. I want you to remember that you threw away a love that would have lasted a lifetime for something that might not last a year." She began signing the papers, her signature bold and clear on each page. Dylan watched in silence, and she could see the exact moment when reality hit him, when he realized that she was actually letting him go. "You don't understand," he said suddenly. "I'm trying to protect you. The world I live in now, the circles I move in, they would destroy you. They would tear you apart." "No, Dylan." Lola looked up from the papers, her eyes blazing with a fire he'd never seen before. "You would have destroyed me. You've been slowly killing the woman I am for months, trying to turn me into someone I'm not. But I won't let you finish the job." She signed the final page with a flourish, then pushed the papers across the table to him. "There. You're free. Go live your perfect life with your perfect wife in your perfect world." Dylan gathered the papers with hands that shook slightly. "I never meant for it to happen like this." "Yes, you did." Lola's voice was steady now, filled with a certainty that seemed to surprise even her. "You've been planning this for months. You've been waiting for the right moment to make your exit. Well, congratulations, you found it. What will you do? Where will you go? That's no longer your concern." Dylan stood at the foot of her bed, and for a moment she thought he might change his mind. She thought he might remember the man he used to be, the man who had fallen in love with her brilliance and her strength. But then his phone buzzed again, and she watched him glance at it, watched his face soften as he read whatever message Victoria had sent. "I'll have my lawyer contact you about the details," he said, his voice back to its businesslike tone. "Don't bother. I'll handle my own legal representation from now on." Dylan paused at the door, his hand on the handle. "Lola, I hope you understand." "I understand perfectly." She turned away from him, facing the window where the Seattle skyline stretched out below. "I understand that you're a coward who destroys beautiful things because he's afraid of them. I understand that you're about to make the biggest mistake of your life. And I understand that someday you're going to realize what you've lost." "And what's that?" Lola turned back to him, and her smile was sad but somehow triumphant. "Everything, Dylan. You've lost everything." He left without another word, the door closing behind him with a finality that echoed through the room. Lola sat in the silence that followed, her hand on her belly, feeling her daughter's strong kicks against her palm. "It's just us now, baby girl," she whispered. "But don't worry. Mama's going to make sure we're just fine." Outside her window, Seattle hummed with life and possibility. And somewhere in the city, a $10 billion deal was waiting for her signature. A deal that would change everything. But first, she had a phone call to make. 2 hours after Dylan left. The silence in the hospital room was deafening after Dylan's departure, broken only by the steady beep of the heart monitor and the distant sounds of the hospital corridor. Lola stared at the ceiling, her hands resting on her belly, feeling the steady movements of her daughter, the only constant in a world that had just imploded. Her phone lay on the bedside table, the screen dark but somehow demanding attention. She knew what she had to do, but the weight of it seemed almost insurmountable. Everything she'd built in secret, every line of code she'd written in the shadows of her marriage, every patent she'd filed under her maiden name, it all led to this moment. With trembling fingers, she picked up the phone and dialed a number she knew by heart. "Nakamura Technologies. This is Kenji Nakamura." "Mr. Nakamura, this is Dr. Lola Williams." Her voice was steadier than she felt. "I'm ready to sign." There was a pause on the other end. "Dr. Williams, are you certain? This is a life-changing decision. Perhaps you should take more time to consider." "I've had plenty of time to consider." Lola's voice hardened with resolve. "I want the papers drawn up for signature within the hour. And I want the transaction completed by end of day." "That's highly unusual for a deal of this magnitude. Are you sure you don't want to review the terms once more with your legal team?" "The terms are acceptable. What I want is speed and discretion. Can you guarantee both?" "Of course. I'll have my team prepare everything immediately. Dr. Williams, if I may say so, your artificial intelligence patents are revolutionary. This acquisition will change the entire landscape of technology." "I know." Lola closed her eyes, feeling the weight of her decision. "And Mr. Nakamura? I want the announcement delayed for 60 days. Can you manage that?" "Certainly. May I ask why?" "Let's just say I want to enjoy the surprise on a few faces when the news breaks." After ending the call, Lola made 3 more phone calls. The first was to the best divorce attorney in Seattle. Not one of the white shoe firms Dylan would expect, but a brilliant woman named Carmen Rodriguez who had a reputation for destroying powerful men who underestimated her. The second was to her sister Maya, who arrived at the hospital within the hour, eyes red with tears of rage and determination. The third was to her former MIT professor, Dr. Elizabeth Chen, who had been tracking her career in secret and was ready to help her protege reclaim her place in the tech world. 3 months later, the September morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Lola's new penthouse office in downtown Seattle. At 34 floors up, she could see the entire city sprawling below her, including the Montgomery Industries building that had once intimidated her. Now it looked small, insignificant, dwarfed by the empire she was quietly building. Isabella Grace Williams lay sleeping in a bassinet beside Lola's desk, her tiny fists curled in perfect peace. Born healthy at 37 weeks, she was the image of her mother with Dylan's ice-blue eyes, a beautiful reminder of both love and betrayal. The birth had been difficult, with only Maya and Dr. Chen present. Dylan had been on his honeymoon in the Maldives with Victoria, posting photos of crystal-clear waters and champagne toasts while his daughter entered the world. Lola hadn't sent him the birth announcement. She'd kept her word. He was free to pretend they didn't exist. The intercom on her desk buzzed. "Dr. Williams, your 10 a.m. is here. Send him in." The door opened to reveal a man in his 50s, impeccably dressed but nervous. Robert Henley, Dylan's former CFO, had reached out to her through intermediaries, claiming to have information she might find interesting. "Dr. Williams, thank you for seeing me." Henley's voice was respectful, almost reverent. "I have to say, when I learned about your situation, I was shocked." Dylan never mentioned. "Mr. Henley, I assume you didn't request this meeting to discuss my personal life." "No, of course not. I came because I thought you should know. Montgomery Industries is in trouble. Serious trouble." Lola's expression didn't change, but she gestured for him to continue. "The Singapore project Dylan was so focused on during your hospitalization. It's falling apart. The investors are pulling out. The board is asking questions about Dylan's leadership. And there are rumors about some of his more recent decisions. Such as, the prenup he signed with Victoria Ashford was complicated. Her father, Judge Ashford, insisted on certain provisions. If Dylan's net worth falls below a certain threshold, or if Montgomery Industries faces bankruptcy, the marriage can be annulled without penalty to the Ashford family. How convenient for them. Dylan doesn't know. He thinks he married into old money and security. But the Ashfords are protecting their own interests first." Lola leaned back in her chair, processing this information. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I worked for that company for 15 years, and I watched Dylan change from a decent man into someone I didn't recognize. What he did to you, leaving you in that hospital, abandoning his child, it's unforgivable. And you think I want revenge? I think you want justice. And I think you're the only person with the power to deliver it." Henley left a thick folder on her desk before excusing himself. Lola didn't open it immediately. Instead, she picked up Isabella, who had begun to stir, and walked to the window. The city stretched out below them, full of possibilities and promises. "What do you think, baby girl?" she whispered to her daughter. "Should Mama show Daddy what he walked away from?" 6 months later, the annual Seattle Technology Innovation Gala was the event of the year for the city's tech elite. Held at the Four Seasons, it drew billionaires, venture capitalists, and industry leaders from around the world. Dylan had attended for the past 5 years, each time with Lola at his side. This year, he arrived with Victoria, who looked stunning in a silver gown that probably cost more than most people's cars. Dylan had aged in the past year. The stress of his failing business ventures had carved lines around his eyes, and his smile seemed forced as he worked the room. Montgomery Industries was hemorrhaging money, and the board was growing increasingly restless. The Singapore project had been a disaster, costing them nearly $1 billion and several major partnerships. "Darling, you look tired," Victoria murmured as they posed for photographers. "Perhaps we should consider that spa weekend in Napa?" "I can't leave the company right now," Dylan replied, his jaw tight. "We're in the middle of crucial negotiations." "With whom?" "From what Daddy says, most of the major players won't even take your calls anymore." The casual cruelty in her voice made him flinch. This was the woman he'd left Lola for, beautiful, connected, but ultimately as cold as the marble floors of the mansion they now shared. "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen." The voice of the event coordinator echoed through the ballroom. "Please welcome our keynote speaker, the woman who just revolutionized artificial intelligence and became the youngest female billionaire in American history. Dr. Lola Williams, CEO of Phoenix Technologies." The applause was thunderous, but Dylan heard it as if from underwater. He watched in stunned silence as Lola walked onto the stage, radiant in a deep blue gown that complemented her skin tone perfectly. She moved with a confidence he'd never seen before, her head held high, her smile genuine and warm. "Thank you," she said, her voice carrying easily through the room. "It's an honor to be here tonight among so many brilliant minds and innovative companies." Dylan's hands were shaking. Phoenix Technologies, He'd heard the name whispered in boardrooms and industry publications. The mysterious company that had seemingly appeared overnight with revolutionary AI technology, backed by a $10 billion acquisition deal that had sent shockwaves through the tech world. The company that was already being courted by every major corporation in America. And it was Lola, his wife, the woman he'd abandoned in a hospital bed. 18 months ago, Lola continued, I was in a very different place in my life. I was married to a man who saw me as a liability rather than a partner. I was told I wasn't smart enough, sophisticated enough, or worthy enough to stand beside him in his world. Dylan felt Victoria's eyes on him, felt the curious stares of people around them. Whispers were starting to ripple through the crowd. But what that man didn't know, Lola's voice grew stronger, is that while he was building his empire, I was building mine. While he was ashamed of my background, I was using that background to create something extraordinary. While he was planning his future with someone else, I was planning a future that would change the world. The room was electric with tension. Dylan could feel photographers turning their cameras toward him, could sense the shift in the room's energy. Tonight, I want to share something with you, Lola continued. Success isn't about being accepted by people who don't value you. It's about knowing your worth and refusing to let anyone diminish it. It's about turning your pain into power and your setbacks into comebacks. The applause was deafening. Dylan watched, mesmerized, as Lola commanded the room with the same brilliance he'd once fallen in love with. The brilliance he'd been too blind to see. Is that your ex-wife? Victoria hissed in his ear. The one you said was a simple housewife? Dylan couldn't answer. He was watching Lola field questions from the audience with the kind of expertise that made it clear she wasn't just a figurehead. She was the real deal. Every patent, every innovation, every breakthrough that had made Phoenix Technologies a global powerhouse had come from her mind. The AI systems we've developed, Lola was saying, will revolutionize healthcare, education, transportation, and communication. We're not just changing how machines think, we're changing how humans live. A reporter stood up. Dr. Williams, there are rumors that you developed this technology while married to Dylan Montgomery of Montgomery Industries. Can you comment on that? Lola's smile didn't waver. I've been working on artificial intelligence research for over a decade. My marriage to Mr. Montgomery ended a year ago, and I've been focused on my work ever since. I prefer to let my achievements speak for themselves. The dismissal was polite but devastating. Dylan felt the room's energy shift again, felt people turning to look at him with new understanding. He was the man who had walked away from brilliance. He was the fool who had traded a diamond for fool's gold. One more question, another reporter called out. What's next for Phoenix Technologies? Well, Lola's eyes sparkled with mischief. I'm looking into real estate investments. There's a particular property in Bellevue that's caught my attention. Sometimes the best revenge is living well, and living well requires a beautiful home. The crowd laughed, but Dylan felt the blood drain from his face. She was talking about the mansion. Their mansion. The one he'd taken Victoria to, the one he'd claimed as his own. As the event wound down, Dylan found himself alone at the bar while Victoria networked with her society friends. He was nursing his third whiskey when a familiar voice spoke behind him. Hello, Dylan. He turned to find Lola standing there, even more beautiful up close. The past year had transformed her from the uncertain woman he'd left in the hospital into a force of nature. Lola. His voice was barely a whisper. Congratulations. Your speech was incredible. Thank you. Her smile was polite but distant. How are you, Dylan? How's married life? It's fine. He couldn't meet her eyes. Lola, I need to ask you something. Phoenix Technologies, the patents, the AI research. How long have you been working on this? 8 years, she said simply. I started the year after we got married. I needed something to keep my mind occupied while you were traveling so much. 8 years. Dylan felt like he'd been punched in the gut. You never said anything. Would you have listened? Or would you have found a way to make it about yourself and your company? The accuracy of her assessment was like a knife between his ribs. I would have been proud of you. No, Dylan. You would have been proud of what I could do for you. There's a difference. Lola, Dr. Williams. A young woman in a business suit approached. I'm sorry to interrupt, but your car is here, and Isabella is ready to go home. Of course. Lola turned back to Dylan. It was nice seeing you again, Dylan. I hope you're happy. Wait. He caught her arm gently. Isabella? You named her Isabella. Isabella Grace Williams. She's beautiful, Dylan. She has your eyes. The pain in his chest was almost unbearable. I'd like to meet her. To be part of her life. You had that chance. You chose not to take it. I made a mistake. I see that now. You made a choice. There's a difference. Please, Lola. I know I don't deserve it, but she's my daughter too. Lola studied his face for a long moment. My lawyer will be in touch. We can discuss supervised visitation, if you're genuinely interested in being a father rather than just alleviating your guilt. I am. I swear I am. We'll see. She turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Dylan. You might want to check the real estate listings tomorrow. I think you'll find them interesting. She walked away, leaving Dylan standing alone at the bar, the weight of his mistakes crushing down on him like a physical force. Across the room, Victoria was holding court with her friends, her laughter bright and careless. She hadn't even noticed his absence. For the first time in a year, Dylan began to understand what he had really lost. Have you ever realized too late that you underestimated someone's potential? How do you think Dylan should handle this situation now that he knows the truth? Share your thoughts below. 3 weeks after the gala. The morning sun cast long shadows across the manicured grounds of the Bellevue estate as Dylan stood in his home office, staring at the foreclosure notice in his hands. The paper trembled slightly, whether from his shaking hands or the weight of his crumbling world, he couldn't tell. Montgomery Industries was hemorrhaging money faster than he could replace it. The Singapore disaster had triggered a cascade of investor withdrawals, and the board had voted no confidence in his leadership just yesterday. The company his grandfather had built, that his father had expanded, that he had sworn to protect, it was dying. And now this. The bank was calling in the mortgage on the mansion. The home he'd fought to keep, the symbol of everything he'd thought he wanted, was about to be taken away. Dylan. Victoria's voice drifted from the doorway, sharp with irritation. Are you coming to brunch? Mother is waiting. He looked up at his wife of 10 months, still beautiful in her silk robe and perfectly styled hair, but there was something cold in her blue eyes that he'd begun to notice more frequently. Something calculating. I can't make brunch today, he said, his voice hoarse. I need to deal with some business issues. Business issues? Victoria stepped into the room, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor. Dylan, you've been saying that for weeks. Mother is starting to ask questions about your stability. My stability? Well, yes. The company's stock price has fallen 60% in the past 6 months. People are talking. And now there are rumors about foreclosure. She gestured vaguely at the papers scattered across his desk. Dylan felt a chill run down his spine. How do you know about the foreclosure? Victoria's smile was thin, brittle. Daddy has friends at the bank. He's been keeping an eye on things. We're concerned about your financial situation. Concerned enough to help? Concerned enough to protect our interests. Victoria's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing the calculation beneath. Daddy thinks it might be time to consider our options. Options. The prenup, Dylan. The clauses about financial stability and asset protection. If Montgomery Industries goes under, if you lose this house. She shrugged delicately. Well, the Ashford family has a reputation to maintain. The words hit him like a physical blow. You're talking about leaving me. I'm talking about protecting myself. Did you really think I'd go down with a sinking ship? Before Dylan could respond, the doorbell rang. Victoria glanced at her watch. Are you expecting someone? No. Dylan set down the foreclosure notice and walked to the front door, Victoria trailing behind him. Through the beveled glass, He could see a woman in a business suit holding a briefcase. He opened the door to find a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s with silver hair and an unmistakable air of authority. "Mr. Montgomery? I'm Carmen Rodriguez, representing Dr. Lola Williams. May I come in?" Dylan's blood ran cold. Lola's lawyer. "Among other things, yes. I have some documents that require your immediate attention." Dylan stepped aside, and Carmen entered the foyer with the confidence of someone who owned the space. Victoria hovered nearby, her eyes narrowing as she took in the visitor. "Mrs. Montgomery," Carmen nodded politely to Victoria. "You might want to sit down for this." "I'll stand, thank you." Victoria's voice was icy. "What business does Dylan's ex-wife have with us?" Carmen opened her briefcase and withdrew a thick folder. "Actually, quite a lot. Mr. Montgomery, I'm here to inform you that Dr. Williams has purchased the mortgage on this property. As of this morning, she is the legal owner of this estate." The words hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Dylan felt the world tilt beneath his feet. "That's impossible," Victoria said, her voice shrill. "This is our home. Dylan bought it before we were married." Actually, Carmen's voice was professionally neutral. Mr. Montgomery bought it during his marriage to Dr. Williams. While the deed was in his name, Washington is a community property state. Dr. Williams had legal claim to half the property, which she chose not to pursue in the divorce proceedings. "She signed a quitclaim deed," Dylan said weakly. "She gave up her rights to the house. She gave up her rights to force a sale during the divorce. She didn't give up her right to purchase the property later. When the bank moved to foreclose, Dr. Williams exercised her option to buy the mortgage. She paid the full amount, $12 million, in cash." Dylan sank into a chair, his legs suddenly unable to support him. "She bought our house. She bought the mortgage, which makes her the legal owner of the property. I have the deed transfer documents here." Carmen placed a folder on the coffee table. "Dr. Williams is prepared to offer you a very generous lease agreement." "A lease agreement?" Victoria's voice rose to near hysteria. "She wants us to rent our own home from her?" "It's not your home anymore, Mrs. Montgomery. It's Dr. Williams' home. She's simply being gracious enough to allow you to remain here temporarily." "This is harassment," Victoria snapped. "Legal harassment. We'll fight this." Carmen's smile was sharp as a blade. "I encourage you to try. Dr. Williams has the best legal team money can buy, and every transaction has been completely above board. She's also prepared to offer character witnesses who can testify to Mr. Montgomery's treatment of his pregnant wife, should you choose to make this contentious." Dylan looked up at that. "Lola wouldn't. Dr. Williams is a very private person, Mr. Montgomery. She has no interest in public drama. But she's also a very intelligent woman who documented everything. Every missed doctor's appointment, every night you didn't come home, every time you chose business over your family. She kept records." The room fell silent except for the ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner. Dylan remembered buying that clock with Lola during their second year of marriage. She'd loved its gentle chiming, had said it made the house feel like a home. "What does she want?" Dylan asked quietly. "She wants you to sign these documents acknowledging the property transfer. She wants you to vacate the premises within 30 days. And she wants to discuss custody arrangements for Isabella." "Isabella?" Victoria's voice was sharp. "Who is Isabella?" Dylan closed his eyes. In all the chaos of the past year, he'd never told Victoria about the baby. He'd compartmentalized his life so completely that his wife didn't even know he had a daughter. "Isabella is my daughter," he said quietly. "Lola and I have a daughter." The silence that followed was deafening. Victoria stared at him as if he'd grown a second head. "You have a child." Her voice was barely a whisper. "You have a child and you never told me?" "Victoria, I can explain." "Explain what?" "That you've been lying to me for our entire marriage? That you abandoned your pregnant wife and child? That you're even more of a monster than I thought." Carmen cleared her throat. "Perhaps I should give you some time to discuss this privately." Dr. Williams is prepared to meet with you tomorrow to discuss the transition and the custody arrangements. She's staying at the Four Seasons downtown. Tell her I'll be there, Dylan said, his voice hollow. Carmen packed her briefcase efficiently. Oh, and Mr. Montgomery? Dr. Williams wanted me to give you this. She handed him a small envelope. She said you'd understand what it means. After Carmen left, Dylan sat in the silence of what had once been his home, staring at the envelope in his hands. Victoria had stormed upstairs, her footsteps echoing through the house like gunshots. He could hear her on the phone, probably calling her father, already planning her exit strategy. With trembling fingers, he opened the envelope. Inside was a single photograph, a baby girl with dark curls and ice-blue eyes, sleeping peacefully in a hospital bassinet. On the back, in Lola's careful handwriting, Isabella Grace Williams. Born March 15th, 7 pounds 2 ounces. She has your eyes but my strength. Dylan stared at the photograph, his vision blurring with tears. This was his daughter. This tiny, perfect human being was his child, and he'd never even seen her. He'd been on his honeymoon when she was born, posting pictures of champagne and sunset while his daughter entered the world without him. She's beautiful. Victoria's voice came from behind him, softer now. She'd changed into street clothes, her suitcase beside her. You're leaving, Dylan said without looking up. I have to. This isn't what I signed up for, Dylan. I married a successful businessman, not a broke father with a complicated past. I know. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. About the baby, about everything. Maybe if you'd told me. Would it have changed anything? Victoria was quiet for a long moment. Probably not. But it might have changed how I felt about you. After she left, Dylan sat alone in the empty house, holding the photograph of his daughter. The grandfather clock chimed noon, its gentle sound echoing through rooms that were no longer his. He thought about Lola in this house, how she'd filled every corner with warmth and laughter, how she'd made him feel like he was home instead of just in a house. He thought about the night she'd told him she was pregnant, how they'd danced in the kitchen while dinner burned on the stove. He thought about the nursery they'd started planning, about the names they'd discussed, about the future they'd mapped out together. And he thought about the moment he'd thrown it all away for a woman who had just walked out on him the second things got difficult. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Mr. Montgomery, this is Dr. Williams. I'll be at the Four Seasons tomorrow at 2 p.m. Room 1205. Please come alone. Dylan stared at the message, his heart pounding. Tomorrow he would face the woman he'd abandoned, the woman who had built an empire while he destroyed his own. Tomorrow he would meet his daughter for the first time. Tomorrow he would finally understand the true cost of his choices. He looked around the house one more time, memorizing details he'd taken for granted. The way the afternoon light streamed through the windows Lola had insisted on keeping uncovered. The built-in bookshelves where she'd displayed her collection of first editions. The kitchen island where they'd shared countless meals and conversations about their dreams. By this time tomorrow, someone else would be living in these rooms. Someone who had every right to be here. Someone who had paid a price Dylan was only beginning to understand. He walked upstairs to pack, the photograph of Isabella clutched in his hand. In the bedroom he'd shared with Victoria, he found a note on the pillow. Dylan, I hope you find what you're looking for. I hope your daughter gives you the happiness you couldn't find with me. Maybe someday you'll understand that love isn't about what someone can give you. It's about what you're willing to give them. You forgot that lesson, but maybe it's not too late to learn it again. Victoria. Dylan crumpled the note and threw it in the trash. Victoria was right about one thing. He had forgotten what love meant. But as he looked at the photograph of his daughter, he felt something stirring in his chest that he hadn't felt in months. Hope. Tomorrow he would face the consequences of his choices. Tomorrow he would meet the daughter he'd abandoned and the woman he'd underestimated. Tomorrow he would find out if redemption was possible, or if some mistakes were too great to forgive. But tonight, he would sit in the house he'd lost and remember the man he used to be. The man who had been worthy of Lola's love, the man who might still be worthy of his daughter's. The grandfather clock chimed again, marking the passage of time in a life that had been forever changed. And somewhere across the city, a brilliant woman was putting her daughter to bed in a penthouse that overlooked the empire she'd built from the ashes of her broken dreams. The game was over. And for the first time in his life, Dylan Montgomery had lost everything. The next day, Four Seasons Hotel, room 1205. Dylan stood outside the hotel room door for a full minute before finally raising his hand to knock. He'd rehearsed this moment a dozen times during the sleepless night, but every word he'd planned seemed inadequate now. How do you apologize for abandoning your pregnant wife? How do you explain walking away from your own child? How do you face the woman whose brilliance you dismissed while she was quietly building an empire? The door opened before he could knock, revealing Lola in a simple navy dress that somehow made her look more powerful than any designer gown ever could. Her hair was pulled back in a sleek bun, and she wore minimal makeup, but she was radiant in a way that took his breath away. Dylan. Her voice was calm, controlled. Thank you for coming. Thank you for agreeing to see me. He stepped into the suite, his eyes immediately drawn to the corner where a playpen had been set up. Inside, a beautiful baby girl with dark curls and unmistakable ice blue eyes was playing with colorful blocks, her movements confident and purposeful. That's Isabella, Lola said simply, watching his face. Dylan's legs nearly gave out. He'd seen the photograph, but seeing his daughter in person was overwhelming. She was perfect, absolutely perfect, and he'd missed an entire year of her life. He couldn't finish the sentence. His throat felt raw with emotion. She's almost 14 months old, Lola continued. She started walking at 10 months, says about 15 words, and has your stubborn streak. She refuses to eat vegetables unless they're hidden in other foods. Dylan laughed despite himself, the sound catching in his throat. I used to do that too. My mother had to puree carrots into everything. I know. You told me that story once. The weight of shared history hung between them. All the small intimacies of their marriage, all the dreams they'd shared, all the love that had once seemed unbreakable. It was all still there, complicated now by betrayal and loss. Would you like to meet her? Lola asked gently. Dylan nodded, not trusting his voice. Lola walked to the playpen and lifted Isabella, who immediately wrapped her arms around her mother's neck. The trust and love in that simple gesture was like a knife in Dylan's chest. Isabella, sweetheart, Lola said softly. This is your daddy. Isabella looked at Dylan with curious eyes. His eyes, and he felt his heart break and rebuild itself in the same moment. She was cautious but not afraid, studying him with the same intensity he'd seen in Lola when she was solving complex problems. Hello, beautiful girl, Dylan whispered, his voice thick with tears. I'm so sorry I wasn't here before. To his amazement, Isabella reached toward him, her small hand grasping at the air. Dylan looked at Lola, who nodded encouragingly. With trembling hands, he reached back, letting Isabella's tiny fingers wrap around his index finger. Dada, Isabella said, the word clear and perfect. Dylan's composure shattered completely. Tears streamed down his face as he realized she knew him. Somehow, despite his absence, she knew he was her father. I've been showing her pictures, Lola said quietly. I didn't want her to grow up not knowing who you were. Even after everything I did to you? She's your daughter, Dylan. She has a right to know her father, even if he's flawed. Dylan looked at Lola through his tears. I don't deserve this. I don't deserve her, and I certainly don't deserve your kindness. You're right, Lola said, her voice steady but not unkind. You don't deserve it. But Isabella deserves to have a father who loves her, and despite everything, I know you're capable of that love. They sat together on the sofa, Isabella between them, playing with blocks while Dylan watched every movement with fascination. She was brilliant like her mother. He could see it in the way she stacked the blocks, in the concentrated expression on her face, in the determined way she tried to solve problems. She's incredible, Dylan said. Just like her mother. She's going to change the world someday, Lola replied. I can already see it in her. She has your determination and my analytical mind. She's going to be unstoppable. I want to be part of her life, Dylan said suddenly. I know I have no right to ask, but I want to be her father. The father she deserves. Lola was quiet for a long moment, watching Isabella play. What happened to your marriage, Dylan? Victoria left yesterday. The moment she learned about Isabella, about the foreclosure, about everything falling apart, she was gone. Her father's already talking about annulment. I'm sorry. Are you? Dylan looked at her with surprise. After everything I put you through? I'm sorry because I never wanted you to be hurt. I wanted you to be happy, even if it wasn't with me. I wanted you to find what you were looking for. What I was looking for was right here all along, Dylan said, his voice breaking. I was just too blind and too proud to see it. Lola reached over and touched his hand gently. Tell me what happened, Dylan. Help me understand how we got here. I was scared, he admitted, the words pouring out like a confession. When I married you, I felt like I was finally becoming the man I wanted to be. You made me better, stronger, more complete. But as the company grew, as I moved in higher circles, I started hearing whispers. People questioning my choices, my judgment. They made me feel like loving you was a weakness. So you decided to prove them right by becoming weak enough to abandon your family? The words stung, but Dylan accepted them. I thought I was protecting myself. I thought I was choosing the path that would make me stronger. But all I did was become the kind of man I'd sworn I'd never be. Like your father. Worse than my father. At least he never abandoned his children. Isabella had crawled over to Dylan, pulling herself up to stand against his leg. She looked up at him with those piercing blue eyes and babbled something that sounded like conversation. She likes you, Lola observed. She's usually shy with strangers. Maybe she knows I'm not really a stranger, Dylan said, gently stroking Isabella's hair. Maybe she can feel that I love her. Love isn't enough, Dylan. I loved you with everything I had, and you still walked away. I know. But I'm not the same man who walked away. Losing you, losing this, he gestured around the room. It's taught me what actually matters. It's taught me that success without love is just expensive loneliness. Lola studied his face for a long moment. What do you want, Dylan? What are you really asking for? I want to earn your forgiveness. I want to be Isabella's father. I want to prove that I can be the man you believed I was when you married me. And what about us? What about our marriage? Dylan's heart clenched. I know I destroyed that. I know I don't deserve a second chance with you. But if you'll let me, I want to try to be the co-parent Isabella needs. I want to be better for her. Lola was quiet for a long time, watching Isabella play with Dylan's watch, her small fingers fascinated by its movement. Finally, she spoke. I've been angry for so long, she said. When you left me in that hospital, I felt like I was drowning. I wanted to hate you to make you pay for what you'd done. And when I signed that deal with Nakamura, when I became successful beyond anything I dreamed, part of me was doing it to show you what you'd lost. You succeeded. But revenge isn't as satisfying as people think it is. Every success felt hollow because the person I'd shared my dreams with wasn't there to celebrate with me. Every milestone Isabella reached made me sadder because you weren't there to see it. I'm here now, Dylan said quietly. If you'll have me. As what? A weekend father? A guilty ex-husband trying to assuage his conscience? As whatever you'll allow me to be. I know I can't undo what I did. I know I can't take back the pain I caused. But I can try to do better going forward. Lola reached into her purse and pulled out a legal document. This is a custody agreement. It gives you visitation rights, supervised at first, then unsupervised if you prove you're committed to being a consistent presence in Isabella's life. Dylan took the papers with shaking hands. What are the terms? You see her twice a week for now. You attend all major milestones, birthdays, holidays, school events when she's older. You contribute to her education and healthcare. And you never ever disappear from her life again. I won't. I swear I won't. Dylan, I need you to understand something. This isn't about us getting back together. This is about Isabella having the father she deserves. Can you accept that? Dylan looked at his daughter, who was now attempting to climb onto his lap, her determination evident in every movement. He thought about the man he'd been when he'd walked away from this hospital room, about the emptiness he'd felt even in his moments of supposed triumph. "I accept that," he said finally. "But I also need you to know that I will never stop loving you. I will never stop regretting what I did to us. And if there's ever a chance, even the smallest possibility, that you could forgive me enough to try again, I'll be here." Dylan. I know you can't trust me right now. I know I have to earn that trust back, if it's even possible. But I want you to know that you're the best thing that ever happened to me. You and Isabella. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of you both. Isabella finally succeeded in climbing onto Dylan's lap, where she settled with a satisfied sigh. She looked up at him and reached for his face, her small palm resting against his cheek. "Dada," she said again, and this time Dylan was ready for the emotion that crashed over him. "Yes, baby girl. I'm your daddy and I'm never going away again." Lola watched this interaction with tears in her eyes. "She's been waiting for you," she said softly. "I told myself I was keeping her from you to protect her, but maybe part of me was hoping you'd fight for her. Fight for us. I should have fought harder. I should have fought from the beginning. You can't change the past, Dylan. But you can influence the future." Over the next hour, they worked out the details of the custody arrangement. Dylan would see Isabella on Wednesday evenings and Saturday afternoons. He would attend her pediatric appointments and help make decisions about her care. He would be present for all major holidays and milestones. "There's something else," Lola said as they prepared to leave. "The house in Bellevue. I bought it, but I don't actually want to live there. Too many memories." "I understand. I want to sell it to you. At cost. It should be Isabella's inheritance, not mine." Dylan stared at her. "Lola, I can't afford $12 million. I can barely afford my apartment rent." "Then we'll work out a payment plan. Or maybe you'll pay me back when you rebuild your company." "What makes you think I can rebuild?" "Because you're Dylan Montgomery. You're brilliant when you're not sabotaging yourself. And now you have something worth fighting for." As they prepared to leave, Dylan held Isabella one more time, memorizing the weight of her in his arms, the sound of her laughter, the way she smiled at him like he was the most important person in the world. "Thank you," he whispered to Lola. "For this chance. For her. For being the incredible woman you are." "Don't thank me yet," Lola replied. "Prove you deserve it." 6 months later, Dylan stood in the kitchen of the Bellevue house, watching Isabella take unsteady steps between the couch and the coffee table. She was growing so fast, changing every day, and he was grateful beyond words that he got to witness it. The house felt different now, warmer, more lived in. He'd removed all traces of Victoria, had donated her belongings to charity. Instead, the house was filled with Isabella's toys, with photographs of her first steps, her first words, her first birthday party. Lola arrived for their weekly co-parenting meeting, her arms full of Isabella's favorite books and toys. She looked radiant, her business thriving, her confidence unwavering. Phoenix Technologies had just been named one of the most innovative companies in the world, and she was being courted by universities and think tanks around the globe. "How's she been?" Lola asked, scooping Isabella into her arms. "Perfect. She said truck yesterday, and she's figured out how to open the child-proof cabinet locks." "Of course she has. She's your daughter." They'd fallen into an easy rhythm over the past months. Co-parenting sessions, shared holidays, coordinated schedules. Dylan had rebuilt his company slowly, carefully, focusing on sustainable growth rather than aggressive expansion. He'd learned that success meant nothing without people to share it with. "Lola," he said as she prepared to leave with Isabella for the week, "would you like to stay for dinner? Isabella loves when we're all together." Lola hesitated. "Dylan, we've talked about this. We're co-parents, not." "I know. I'm not asking for anything more than dinner. Just, please, stay." She looked at Isabella, who was clapping her hands and babbling excitedly at the prospect of both parents being present. "Okay. But just dinner. They cooked together, the three of them, Isabella in her high chair supervising with the authority of a tiny CEO. Dylan watched Lola as she moved around the kitchen, remembering all the evenings they'd spent like this during their marriage, and feeling grateful for this second chance at family, even if it wasn't the family he'd once imagined. "I have something to tell you," Lola said over dinner. "I've been offered a position at MIT, Department Head of Artificial Intelligence Research." Dylan's heart sank. "That's incredible. Congratulations." "It's in Boston. I know where MIT is." "Dylan, You have to take it. It's your dream job. You can't turn it down because of the custody arrangement." "I haven't decided yet. What would it take for you to stay?" Lola looked at him across the table, her expression unreadable. "I'd need to know that this co-parenting thing is real. That you're not going to disappear again when things get difficult." "I'm not going anywhere. Ever. I'd need to know that you've really changed. That you've learned from your mistakes." "I have. I swear I have. And I'd need to know that if we really tried again, you wouldn't be ashamed of me. You wouldn't see me as a liability." Dylan's heart stopped. "Are you saying?" "I'm saying that I never stopped loving you. I tried to hate you, I tried to move on, but I couldn't. Watching you with Isabella, seeing how you've changed, how you've grown. It's reminded me why I fell in love with you in the first place." Dylan reached across the table and took her hands. "Lola, I love you. I've loved you every day since I walked away, and I've regretted leaving you every moment since. If you'll have me, if you'll trust me with your heart again, I promise I'll never take it for granted." "It won't be easy," Lola warned. "I'm not the same woman you married. I'm stronger now, more independent. I won't go back to being the quiet wife who stands in the background. I don't want you to. I want the brilliant, powerful, incredible woman you've become. I want to stand beside you, not in front of you. And if people whisper, if they question your choices, let them whisper. I'd rather be questioned for loving you than praised for losing you." Isabella chose that moment to bang her spoon against her high chair, demanding attention. Both parents turned to her, and she grinned at them with pure joy, as if she understood that something important had just happened. "What do you say, baby girl?" Dylan asked, lifting her from her chair. "Should we give Daddy another chance?" Isabella babbled something that sounded remarkably like yes, and all three of them laughed. That night, after Isabella was asleep in her crib, Dylan and Lola sat on the couch where they'd once planned their future together. The house was quiet except for the gentle ticking of the grandfather clock, and the Seattle skyline glittered beyond the windows. "I want to do this right this time," Dylan said, his arm around Lola's shoulders. "I want to court you properly, earn your trust back, prove that I'm worthy of you." "We have time," Lola replied. "We have all the time in the world." "Does this mean you're staying?" "Turning down MIT. I'm negotiating with them to open a satellite campus here in Seattle. Phoenix Technologies has the resources to fund it, and I think it could be revolutionary." Dylan smiled. "Of course you found a way to have everything you want. You always were the smartest person in the room." "Not the smartest," Lola corrected. "Just the most determined." 6 months later, Dylan stood at the altar of the same church where they'd been married 6 years earlier. This time, Isabella was there as their flower girl, toddling down the aisle scattering petals with serious concentration. This time, both families were present, tears of joy replacing the tears of loss that had marked their divorce. This time, when Dylan promised to love and honor Lola in sickness and in health, in good times and bad, for richer or poorer, he understood the weight of those words. He'd learned that love wasn't about finding someone who made you look good. It was about finding someone who made you be good. As they exchanged rings, new ones, symbolizing their new beginning, Dylan thought about the journey that had brought them here. The mistakes, the pain, the growth, the forgiveness. The woman beside him had built an empire from the ashes of their broken marriage, had raised their daughter with grace and strength, had found it in her heart to forgive the unforgivable. "I love you," he whispered as they were pronounced husband and wife for the second time. "I love you too," Lola replied. "Now and always." They kissed as Isabella clapped her hands in delight, as their families cheered, as the Seattle sun streamed through the stained glass windows. It was a new beginning built on the wisdom of hard-won experience, a second chance at a love that had survived the worst and emerged stronger. And in the front row, Dylan's grandfather's pocket watch ticked steadily in his vest pocket, a reminder that time, like love, was precious and should never be taken for granted. Some stories end with first love.
Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.